Namo Lokeshvaraya. Though she sees that in all phenomena there is no coming and going, she strives solely for the sake of beings. To the sublime teacher, inseparable from Avalokiteshvara, the protector of beings, I pay constant homage with respectful body, speech, and mind. The perfect Buddhas, the source of happiness and ultimate peace, exist through having accomplished the sacred Dharma, and that, in turn, depends on knowing how to practice it. This practice of the Bodhisattva I shall therefore now explain. Now that I have this great ship, a precious human life, so hard to obtain, I must carry myself and others across the ocean of samsara, to that end to listen, reflect, and meditate day and night without distraction is the practice of a Bodhisattva. In my native land, waves of attachment to friends and kin search, hatred for enemies rages like fire. The darkness of stupidity, not caring what to adopt or avoid, thickens. To abandon my native land is the practice of a Bodhisattva. When unfavorable places are abandoned, disturbing emotions gradually fade. When there are no distractions, positive activities naturally increase as awareness becomes clearer, confidence in the Dharma grows. To rely on solitude is the practice of a Bodhisattva. Close friends who have long been together will separate. Wealth and possessions, gained with much effort, will be left behind. Consciousness, a guest, will leave the hotel of the body. To give up the concerns of this life is the practice of a Bodhisattva. In bad company, the three poisons grow stronger. Listening, reflection, and meditation decline, and loving kindness and compassion vanish. To avoid unsuitable friends is the practice of a Bodhisattva. Through reliance on a true spiritual friend, one's faults will fade, and good qualities will grow like a waxing moon. To consider him even more precious than one's own body is the practice of Bodhisattva. Whom can worldly gods protect, themselves imprisoned in samsara? To take refuge in the three jewels, and never fail those they protect, is the practice of Bodhisattva. The Buddha taught that the unendurable suffering of the lower realms is the fruit of unvirtuous actions. Therefore, to never act unvirtuously, even at the cost of one's own life, is the practice of a Bodhisattva. Like dew on grass, the delights of the three worlds, by their very nature, evaporate in an instant. To strive for the supreme level of liberation, which never changes, is the practice of a Bodhisattva. If all the mothers who have loved me since beginning this time are suffering, what is the use of my own happiness? So with the aim of liberating limitless sentient beings, to set my mind on enlightenment is the practice of a Bodhisattva. All suffering, without exception, arises from desiring happiness for oneself, while perfect Buddhahood is born from the thought of benefiting others. Therefore, to really exchange my own happiness for the suffering of others is the practice of a Bodhisattva. If someone driven by great desire seizes all my wealth, or induces others to do so, to dedicate to him my body possessions, past, present, and future merit, is the practice of Bodhisattva. If in return for not the slightest wrong of mine, someone were to cut off even my very head, through the power of compassion to take all his negative actions upon myself is the practice of a bodhisattva. Even if someone says all sorts of derogatory things about me and proclaims them throughout the universe, in return, out of loving kindness, to extol that person's qualities is the practice of a bodhisattva. Even if, in the midst of a large gathering, someone exposes my hidden faults with insulting language, to bow to him respectfully, regarding him as a spiritual friend, is the practice of a bodhisattva. Even if one I have lovingly cared for, like my own child, regards me as an enemy, to love him even more, as a mother loves a sick child, is the practice of bodhisattva. Even if my peers or my inferiors, out of pride, do all they can to debase me, to respectfully consider them like my teachers, on the crown of my head, is the practice of a bodhisattva. Even when utterly destitute and constantly maligned by others, afflicted by terrible illness and prey to evil forces, to still draw upon myself the suffering and wrongdoing of all beings, and not lose heart is the practice of a bodhisattva. Though I may be famous and revered by many, and as rich as the god of wealth himself, to see that the wealth and glory of the world are without essence, and to be free of arrogance, is the practice of bodhisattva. If one does not conquer one's own hatred, the more one fights outer enemies, the more they will increase. Therefore, with the armies of loving kindness and compassion, to tame one's own mind is the practice of bodhisattva. Since pleasures and desirable things are like salt water, the more one tastes them, the more one's thirst increases. To abandon promptly all objects which arouse attachment is the practice of a bodhisattva. All that appears is the work of one's own mind. The nature of mind is primordially free from conceptual limitations. To recognize this nature, and not to entertain concepts of subject and object, is the practice of bodhisattva. When encountering objects which please us, to view them like rainbows in summer, not ultimately real however beautiful they appear, and to relinquish craving and attachment, is the practice of bodhisattva. The various forms of suffering are like the death of one's child in a dream. Clinging to deluded perceptions as real, we exhaust ourselves. Therefore, when encountering unfavorable circumstances, to view them as illusions is the practice of bodhisattva. If those who wish for enlightenment must give away even their own bodies, how much more should it be true of material objects? Therefore, without expectation of result or reward, to give with generosity is the practice of bodhisattva. If lacking discipline, one cannot accomplish one's own good, it is laughable to think of accomplishing the good of others. Therefore, to observe discipline without samsaric motives is the practice of bodhisattva. For a bodhisattva who desires the joys of virtue, all who harm him are like a precious treasure. Therefore, to cultivate patience towards all, without resentment, is the practice of a bodhisattva. Merely for their own sake, even Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas make efforts like someone whose hair is on fire, trying to put it out. But seeing this for the sake of all beings, to practice diligence, the source of excellent qualities, is the practice of a bodhisattva. Knowing that through profound insight, thoroughly grounded in sustained calm, disturbing emotions are completely conquered. To practice the concentration which utterly transcends the four formless states is the practice of bodhisattva. The four formless states is the practice of a bodhisattva. In the absence of wisdom, perfect enlightenment cannot be attained through the other five perfections alone. Therefore, to cultivate wisdom, combined with skillful means, and free from the three concepts, is the practice of bodhisattva. If I do not examine my own defects, though outwardly a Dharma practitioner, I may act contrary to the Dharma. If I do not examine my own defects, though outwardly a Dharma practitioner, I may act contrary to the Dharma. Therefore, continuously to examine my own faults, and to give them up is the practice of bodhisattva. If impelled by negative emotions, I relate the faults of other bodhisattvas, I will myself degenerate. Therefore, to not talk about the faults of anyone who has entered the Vajrayana is the practice of a bodhisattva. Offerings and respect may bring discord and cause listening, reflection, and meditation to decline. Therefore, to avoid attachment to the homes of friends and benefactors is the practice of a bodhisattva. Harsh words disturb the minds of others and spoil our own bodhisattva practice. Therefore, to give up rough speech, which others find unpleasant, is the practice of bodhisattva. When emotions become habitual, they are hard to get rid of with antidotes. Therefore, with mindfulness and vigilance, to seize the weapon of the antidote and crush attachment and other negative emotions the moment they arise, is the practice of bodhisattva. In short, wherever I am, whatever I do, to be continually mindful and alert, asking, what is the state of my mind, and accomplishing the good of others, is the practice of a bodhisattva. Dedicating to enlightenment through wisdom, purified of the three concepts, all merit achieved by such endeavor to remove the suffering of numberless beings, is the practice of bodhisattva. Through the merit arising from this, and through the power of the sublime bodhicitta, relative and absolute, may all beings become like the Lord of Avalokiteshvara, who is beyond the extremes of samsara and nirvana.